let's move to an exciting new segment that we really want to utilize as we see teams being eliminated this playoffs. It's Cope Springs Eternal. Do you want
Cope
to explain how this
season.
segment works, and then we'll get into it?
So in this segment, we're going to talk about some of the cited reasons that fans have, reasons slash excuses that fans have for why their team either wasn't good enough or should have been but got eliminated, or is doing poorly in the playoffs now. And we're going to decide if these teams have hope or if it's just cope. Okay, so the first story that we have to talk about some of these older stars because Steph, KD, and LeBron are now out of the playoffs. Steph didn't make the playoffs, of course. KD and LeBron were eliminated in round one. And I just wanted to cite this for the audience. It's Tim Reynolds, who he's a writer who follows the Heat. He said that the last time none of Steph, KD, and LeBron were part of NBA playoff win of a series was 2005. LeBron was in his second year on those awful Cavs teams, and Steph and KD were in 11th grade. So it really does feel like the end of an era. However, fans of the Golden State Warriors, for in the case of Steph, would say, well, our roster is just too unathletic. Or Draymond's suspension, if he could just control himself, we would have made the playoffs outright and not been able to be eliminated in the play-in. Or Kerr just didn't play the right rotations. So tell me, Will, do you think that any of these reasons are reasons for hope, or is it just cope for Golden State?
For Golden State specifically, I'm
Yeah, your
gonna
favorite team.
I'm honestly gonna say that their cope is part of the reason for hope.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
I honestly do think that their roster isn't very good. I think Wiggins is, for lack of a better term, toast. I think Draymond put his team in a really bad position and got suspended, which got them a worse seed, which made it a really uphill battle to win a spot in the playoffs because they had to win 2 games. That singular game versus Sacramento that they lost was really bad. Way worse than even I
The
expected for
play-in
them.
game?
Yeah, the playing game that they
Yeah,
lost to Sacramento.
was
It was
really
just
bad.
like, man, I mean, Clay had such a bad game. They just all had such a bad game. I still think they can be somewhat formidable with Steph still if they change things up a lot. I think they're kind of limited in what they can do, so maybe this is unrealistic to think that.
Well, less limited than some of the other teams we're going to talk about, but
Yeah,
you're right.
like Steph's obviously not, well, washed. He still has years left to play. That said, it's not like he's the Steph of old, and I'll let you take it from there.
Oh, you're asking me if I think I actually tend to think a lot of it is cope. I think that a lot of the complaints about Kerr's rotations, I was buying into earlier in the season when in particular when he like wasn't playing some of the younger players and Clay was clearly like still trying to find his footing in the season. Wiggins had a really slow start as well. And the younger players, whenever they did get to play, like provided some athletic spark and just energy, which is what you need in the regular season. However, they are not ready.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think it's because they didn't play enough in the regular season. It's just you end up in a situation because of the roster where things are the coach is constantly trying to plug different holes that keep cropping up because they don't have a complete team. They're too small. They're too small and they don't have a second high level creator outside of Steph. They just don't. It's too much pressure on him. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think that part of the reason I think it's cope is because Steph hasn't been as good this season. His decision making, in particular, in some of these close games and these late game situations, that's the thing with Golden State is they don't have a bad point differential, but they lost a ton of close games. And I watched a lot of them. Like I live in California, I've been watching Warriors for years. Their execution down the stretch, in particular defensively, but even more offensively because of Steph's limitation, particularly as a playmaker. They just ended up in these situations where they're either taking a bad shot, or more often the ball's getting turned over, sometimes in transition with just careless passes, which has always been a thing with Steph, but they don't have the margin for error for that anymore. And Steph, he went through an extended shooting slump at the end of the season, and it really just kept up
Mm-hmm.
through the plan. But the fact of the matter is, he is not the guy that can carry like that anymore.
Yeah.
And I think because he's not quite that level, having a secondary high level creator isn't enough, because I don't think that Steph is a 1A anymore. He
Mm-hmm.
can be a 1B, but you would need someone really good next to him. I could erase all of what I said if Golden State somehow swindled Giannis away from the Bucks,
Oh
because
yeah.
then you're in a situation where you have the 1A. It's exactly what that team needs, with the size, with the athleticism, with an interior force, which Golden State hasn't ever really had at a high level, but they were able to make up for it with jump shooting and some sort of upper middle level athleticism in Iguodala and Wiggins during their championship year. But anything short of that, I just don't see it for this team in terms of expanding their title window.
Whoa. So then the book is closed on Steph's title window on Golden State.
Yes, that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. Unless they get Giannis, that's
Yeah.
which you never know with this
He's
stuff.
made
But
comments that he's liked the sound of that. I don't know like the logistics of whether that can happen or not, but I could see
they'd
it
give up
happening
every
if it
pick.
was.
They'd give up Kaminga. I don't know that Milwaukee would take it, but they'd probably take it over what some other teams could give. It depends who's interested, because if you're in competition with, say, OKC, you're screwed because
If
they have all the
Milwaukee's
picks.
front office is listening to this, which they're definitely not, but
Do
don't
not.
don't
Yeah.
do Giannis any favors.
Don't send him to the Western Conference.
Don't
We're
just like
good.
treat him really well and send him wherever he wants to go. Okay, let's go to the Suns. So the Suns have just been eliminated. The cope has been obviously critiques of Frank Vogel, rumors leaking about KD's role in the offense. The report came out that he didn't like how he was being used, that he was relegated to the corner too often. Am I missing any other cope? What other cope do we have for Suns?
I mean, that's it, because they can't really blame anything else, because there's very little else that they can change.
Yeah,
This team is extremely limited in what they can do to change the team roster wise, because of all they gave up for KD. But I'm going to go ahead and say cope on KD's part.
yeah,
Kevin Durant shouldn't have to be the best player on this team, frankly, because to me, the way the Suns were going to achieve their ceiling is if Booker surpassed him. And it looked like he was on the way to doing that last playoffs, but he has had a really disappointing season. The point book experiment appears to have failed, because that's not really his role. And he hasn't been able to figure out a way to maintain his potency in the role of point guard. KD being unhappy with his role in the offense is pretty rich, because now look, I want to give him credit for carrying the Suns during the stretch when Beal was injured like half the season, and Booker was out for long stretches of the beginning of the season with ankle things, and KD was able to kind of have the Suns barely float around 500. But he is not an offensive hub. He is not an offensive
yeah,
engine, let's say.
which I
He
hate.
is incredibly turnover prone. He hates dealing with double teams. He is an incredible off ball player. And it's not about him standing in the corner or whatever, but I think the Suns run a lot of stuff for him to get him shots in his
Yeah,
spots, actually.
right.
But the problem is that when you can turn KD into a playmaker, his impact diminishes severely. So I
Yeah,
don't know how much more of a role he wants in the offense. I think he takes a lot of shots.
yeah.
He
I just
likes to
don't
do a
get
lot of
it.
ISOs.
I don't get how
So
it was very frustrating for me to watch that series and see how KD's lack of playmaking just really made them like one note. because it's like he's getting his shot and getting to a baseline jumper and he's hitting these jumpers, then he's running back with like a smirk on his face of like, wow, I can't believe they think they can contest my shot. And he's like having such a good time over here. Other times, people are reading into his body language saying he's unhappy on the Suns, and then he's responding to people, you know what I mean? And I don't know what we're to believe with KD, but what I do believe is true is that he is aging and his injuries are catching up to him a little bit. And he's not as physical dribbling and driving the ball. And he's just looking for that
Doesn't get
jumper.
downhill. Finishes
Yeah.
at the rim well when he does get downhill, but
Yeah. Well,
doesn't get downhill as
he's
much.
better in transition doing that, obviously, but in the half court, just not as much. And
Yeah.
it just felt like he was shooting the Suns out of the series, even when he was making a shot. But is it all on KD's fault, or is it all
No,
his
it's
fault?
not.
No,
It's
it's the
not.
three
I
stars
mean,
and the diminishing
yeah.
returns and the stupid roster construction. And now it looks like to me they got to trade KD because I don't see any other way. Because you're not trading Booker, and it's really hard to trade Beal. You're gonna get a decent return for KD if you can do it. I think. So I would go that direction and just give the team to Booker and make a smarter roster around him with better defenders.
Well, they used to have that, but
Yes.
okay, let's move on to the Lakers, who just got eliminated by the Denver Nuggets. It's the same stuff. The excuses are the supporting cast wasn't good enough, D'Lo wasn't good enough, the refs were against them, and the altitude got them. So tell me, Will, is there hope or was this cope?
It's a mix. I think the altitude excuse is cope, and but I do think the supporting cast is hope. As far as if the Lakers can do things to move D'Lo and Rui and get better role players in there who are better defenders, a better perimeter defender, obviously the roster is going to be better and the team's going to be better. I don't know how the team is feeling. I don't know if LeBron wants out. I don't know if AD wants out. I will say throwing Darvin Ham under the bus is cope too. I buy blaming him more for weird rotations in the regular season, causing them to be a 7 seed that then matched them up with the Nuggets to be the criticism of him. But I don't criticize
They could
anything that he
also
was.
blame Devonte Graham for that, though.
Yeah, goddamn Devonte Graham. He killed the Lakers. Um, But yeah, I think Darvin Ham was like a fine coach in the series. I didn't have too many like problems with him. I thought the Lakers played pretty well.
I think that there is some hope for the Lakers, but I will say some of the blaming of the supporting cast is cope because they decided to keep D'Lo at the trade deadline, the front office that is. So maybe the fans are saying like we're blaming the front office for keeping D'Lo, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But they got a lot from Austin. They didn't get a lot from Rui, but they could have just played him less because he was a defensive liability, right? I think Austin did a great job defensively in this series, and his efficiency went down offensively, but he was still giving you a lot. They had Torian Prince, who gave them some spark off the bench. I don't know if anyone's ever used Torian Prince and spark in the same sentence, but he was scoring some points, man. He was putting buckets on the Nuggets. But for the most part, I think the problem is that the roster is not constructed in such a way currently that allows AD and LeBron to fully sink into the roles that they are best at. You mentioned it's tough having to be the two best offensive players and the two best defensive players on that team, and they are those things by far. LeBron's just getting older. And so you could say, like, well, LeBron just has to be better. And part of me goes that direction because there were stretches in this series defensively that really killed the Nuggets. But you see, like, when he is fully locked in and he can do that on both ends of the floor for not even 48 minutes, but because he's getting some relief offensively, even from the supporting cast, then he could be really dangerous. I don't know that that's going to be the case to the same extent in a year when he is 40, but I think that there is hope for, I'll say, one more run for this team just because like you need LeBron to be operating at this level, but they do need a little bit of help. I don't think that the refs were against the
Oh
Lakers
God.
in this
Refs is
series
the
at
biggest cope.
all. I think it was actually pretty fair for the most part in this series, and if anything, the Lakers got the more benefit of the doubt. And the altitude is the altitude. Like, that shit's tough. I think in game 5, both teams looked gassed from having flown back from LA to now playing in altitude for the first game
Mhm.
back in Denver. And I was kind of like, ugh, are the Nuggets going to win this war of attrition? Because they also look tired. And they did end up doing
Mhm.
that. But you can only imagine how a 39-year-old LeBron James felt choking on in his lungs and uh, trying to close out this game to just keep their season alive. So
I mean, if LeBron and AD want to come back and run it again and have a legitimate shot at winning a title, they would have to like get rid of D'Lo, who's not going to get you a huge return, and Austin Reeves, which would suck for them.
probably because they need someone that's high level at that spot. And I think getting rid of Austin Reeves is a big no-no because of how versatile he is. He takes a lot
Mm.
of load off LeBron. So whatever move you made where you got rid of him, it would have to be worth it. Like, you'd have to be sure about
They,
that.
if I'm LeBron, I'm leaving personally, but um,
Imagine if they had Derek White. Oh my God, kill me.
mm, mm. Are there any other coping teams that we're going through, or is
No, I just wanted to talk about those three because we are seeing this changing of the guard moment. And I think that people have been talking about it even since last year, ever since the Nuggets swept the Lakers, then how there are new stars on the rise. And Anthony Edwards is ready to snatch KD's chain. And I think he basically did in that series sweep against the Suns. He had lots of moments against him. You saw Jamal, despite all the reverence that he had for LeBron in his post game, he was really happy to dunk on LeBron and with that
mm,
clutch dunk in game 5 too. And it feels very emblematic of a time where the stars of the 2010s are just not going to be the guys anymore. And part of it is because of their age, but also because of the nature of what having an aging star means for roster construction.
yeah, if any of these guys go on to win another title, they're not going to be the number one option anymore. And so fans are going to have a hard time really, what's the word, accept these titles. Like obviously they'll accept it, but like if you went on to the Nuggets or if you went on to the Warriors, or if you went to the Celtics or
I mean,
whatever.
man, please make LeBron a sixth man for the Nuggets. Like,
Yeah. It's like if he's playing a more limited role and he wins a championship and people are like, well, LeBron won 5 titles, everyone's going to be like, the fifth one he was on the bench, like
it's
whatever.
kind of like
So,
Kareem's titles because he had Magic. I think they would be
hmm
looked at similarly.
yeah. So it's
Um,
like,
yeah,
it just depends. Like, even if LeBron and Steph teamed up, like if LeBron went to the Warriors and they won a title, it's like, it's weird. It's a weird thing.
it's just like when KD went there. I think probably if that happened, it would be LeBron who won the Finals MVP.
Hmm. Yeah,
But there would
probably.
definitely be some series where Steph just saves them.
All
Like, these
this,
guys should all
yeah.
just team up.
Yeah, they
It'll
should.
just be a 3-man team.
They should, but it just seems so far fetched when we have teams like the Nuggets and the Celtics and the Wolves and
Yeah, because all
OKC. It's
those old
just,
guys still have to play the regular season and like make the
yeah,
playoffs. It's not just
it
using your star
just
power to get through a playoff series.
it seems so unrealistic at this point. Now, I saw Get Up talking about who's going to be the face of the league now. They were kind of going on this
Mm.
same line of thinking with these three iconic stars and how they're on the
They're
way out.
also
And
American, right?
oh yeah,
Part of the thing with the best players in the league over the past 5 years, 6, has been that they're all non-American between Giannis, Jokic, and
hmm
Embiid. Now we have the top MVP vote getters are going to be Luca, Jokic, and Shea, who are all non-American. And SGA is North American, but he is from Canada, and he's
Canadian.
not really. Uh, I
Yeah,
don't think that people are really enamored with his "What a Pro Wants" commercials right now either.
yeah.
But Anthony Edwards, he's got that spunk. It's one of the reasons that I think Jason Tatum has sort of been like shoved in our faces is because they want an
Mm,
American star, even though he's not really that guy. Even if Celtics want to win, even if he's amazing and has that title, he doesn't have that like personality aspect. And it's not like LeBron was some like boisterous person, but he had a specific aura about him from the time he came in the league because of all the attention that was on him from the time he was a teenager. And
Yeah.
so he's always been a personality
Yeah.
uh
And
in
he's had
the
the
yeah,
athleticism to match. He had that athleticism in
right.
the next level,
Right, and the way he
like just,
plays was always
yeah,
just like,
yeah,
harder, harder. So I think that's why Anthony Edwards is definitely appealing to particularly these media types who are trying to find that story. That's what they're doing, right? They're trying to create the story of
yeah,
like what is the next phase of the league, and it's easier to do that when they're American. So
yeah. I mean, I
I
get
get it.
frustrated, obviously, when Jokic is downplayed just because of people complaining that he's boring or they don't like the aesthetics or blah blah blah.
Right, but
That's
like for
another
most of
thing.
his career, he also didn't like being in the spotlight either,
Yeah,
right? You can contrast that to Embiid, who he clearly loves being in the spotlight. He's always doing his like pre his
yeah,
MVP campaign puff pieces with like Bond temps on ESPN and
right.
stuff. But you can even see with Embiid, it's not like people are thinking about him as a face of the league, and part of that is because he's not American.
Yeah,
Even with Giannis, who was probably the closest of those three guys to being that, it's never really reached anywhere near the same level as, say, a Steph, who obviously came into the league with the legend that he was out of college as well. And I think uh, Embiid and Shea both went to college in the US too, but it's different with men's college basketball now. Like you don't stay as long, and so you don't build up that sort of
hmm,
brand, right?
hmm,
I think it's so much of it is about branding, and
yeah.
LeBron's kind of
It's just the
the
reality.
king of that. I no pun intended.
Yeah.
Um, but
Right
these other
now, yeah.
guys are
I'd
not
put
quite
my
on that
money.
level.
I'm putting my money on Ant to be the next face of the league. But we are in this like question of, is there going to be a Nuggets dynasty? Is this the Jokic era? All that, which I obviously am hoping it will. Does that mean we're going to win a championship every year? Probably not. Are we going to get three or at least another one? Are we going to get multiple in a span of 5, 7 years? I have no idea. I would be surprised if the Wolves didn't get one. It is an aesthetic question. It is a personality question. It's a branding question. And Ant, it seems to me to be meeting all those things. He's already been in a movie and he was like not terrible in it, to be honest. He was like pretty good
Ant
job.
was? What
Yeah.
movie?
The Adam Sandler one. I think it's called like Hustle or something like that.
What's it about?
It stars Juancho Hernan Gomez, who former Nugget, and it's about Adam Sandler as an agent, and he finds Juancho, who's I don't think he plays himself, but he plays like this international superstar who Adam Sandler brings to the U.S. and then he's playing in the NBA, and Ant is like the villain who's like giving him a hard
Oh
time,
my
and
gosh! Wait, I want to
yeah,
see this.
yeah, you have to watch it.
Thank you all for joining us on What's in a Game. Definitely look out for our Nuggets Wolves series preview on Friday. We'll also be recapping a couple of the other round one series that are still going on, so don't worry about that. Please remember to like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, leave us a review on Spotify or Amazon Music. Tell your mom, tell your dad, tell your brothers, your sisters, your friends. We're trying to grow this thing. And just remember that winning is fun and losing sucks.